So, guys, I'm gonna be honest, I thought this was one of the good ones, but it seems I was wrong. Granted, this is far from the worst movie we've watched so far, and I'm sure by the end, it will end up probably more towards the middle of my personal rankings, but for now, I mean, we're probably at the second worst here. But even saying that is loaded because I would probably rate First Flight a 2, whereas this is a solid 4 for the valiant attempt at making something good, which is 4 parallel universes ahead of Green Lantern. Set in an unknown universe which we will call Earth 1, the Justice League are constructing their famous watchtower under Batman's supervision. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor is attacking an unknown facility with who looks like the Joker, making a daring escape from familiar but different superhumans before escaping to the middle of the street. Luthor turns himself into the police and requests to see Superman, where all parties basically immediately know that this Lex Luthor is from a parallel universe, which we'll call Earth 2 for simplicity. In his universe, he was the leader of the Justice League, but they were wiped out by an organization known as the Crime Syndicate. He requests the Earth 1 Justice League's help, which they accept, barring Batman. As well, Luthor stashed the object he stole from the Crime Syndicate in the beginning of the movie on the Watchtower before leading most of the Justice League to Earth 2, where they immediately run into two members of the Crime Syndicate, Owlman and Superwoman, and their lackeys. After a harrowing escape, this alliance then forms a plan to take out the Crime Syndicate, or at least Lex wants to, before Superman usurps control and makes the plan himself to immediately target the big guys. Surprisingly, all of their attacks on the Crime Syndicate and their operations succeed even with the vast numbers disadvantage they put themselves into. Convenient. But not so convenient, the government and populace are too scared of the Syndicate to imprison them, and so those captured are immediately released. Two alternate plots start here, with Martian Manhunter gaining a fondness for the president's daughter, who is one of the people most openly opposed to the Crime Syndicate, and so takes it upon himself to protect her during their reign. Meanwhile, Owlman and Superwoman begin work on a plot to literally destroy the multiverse. According to Owlman, there is a universe from which all others originated, dubbed Earth Prime, and is constructing a megabomb using a device that contains energy in its purest form. He tells the rest of the Syndicate that they can use it to threaten the governments into submission, but he plans to use it to destroy Earth Prime, which will apparently wipe out all other Earths since it was the original. We will get into the several reasons why this is stupid just a bit later. For now, the Justice League catches wind of this plan, especially once Batman was dragged to Earth 2. Oh yeah, Superwoman went to retrieve the device that Lex stole from the Watchtower, the quantum trigger, which is that pure energy thing. Batman, along with several other heroes he beamed up, attempts to fight off the invaders, but Superwoman escapes with the device, and Batman follows her through the portal. Once they make it to where the bomb is almost done being constructed, the Justice League battles the Crime Syndicate and absolutely annihilates them. Sure, the Crime Syndicate get a few good shots in, but it's really not even close on any front, really. That is, except when it comes to Batman versus Owlman. See, Superwoman broke Batman's rib earlier, and since he's not in his best form, he loses, and so Owlman teleports both him and the bomb to Earth Prime. Though Flash volunteers, Batman elects to have Johnny Quick, Flash's Crime Syndicate counterpart, vibrate at the correct frequency to make a stable portal to Earth Prime, where Batman pursues him, instead of sending in Superman, of course. Batman fights a mostly losing battle against Owlman as the latter tries to persuade Batman with the same logic he used to convince Superwoman to go along with him. Owlman reasons that since every choice inevitably creates another Earth that is entirely separate from this version of him, he says that those choices don't ultimately matter and thus wants to make the only choice that does by ending every universe at the same time. But he also says that humanity is, quote, a cancer and that he is eradicating it. In the end, neither tactic works, and Batman teleports both Owlman and the bomb to an uninhabitable Earth, where the bomb explodes and kills Owlman and presumably that version of Earth. Back on Earth 2, the government grows a backbone and arrests the Crime Syndicate, who don't fight back, and the Justice League returns to their Earth, where Batman has begun recruiting more members, that being those who fought with him against Superwoman earlier. The end. I think the most obvious and biggest issue with the movie is how half-baked it feels. Nothing is finished here, or it might be a problem with overwriting a script. That is, this is quite literally the third, maybe fourth version of this story that's been written, so the writers gloss over the stuff that seemed boring to them on a second, third, fourth run through the story. That theory is one I doubt though, as these movies are no stranger to adaptations, and they've been done way better than was done here. I'm going to go into a very specific example of the half-baked deepness in just a moment, but first I think that this movie's history is worth understanding. So this film was originally supposed to be a tie-in to the DCAU. You know, Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, Justice League, and Justice League Unlimited, specifically with the latter two. It was originally called Justice League Worlds Collide and was meant to serve as a bridge between the two series, explaining why the League felt the need to expand their ranks, as we see happened in Unlimited. That script was also originally written to be based on both the storyline Crisis on Earth 3 and JLA Earth 2, the pre-crisis and post-crisis variations of the comic Justice League encountering the crime syndicate for the first time. The Worlds Collide script was scrapped at some point and then reworked into what we now know as Crisis on Two Earths, and it presumably keeps some of the aspects from that version, like the Justice League recruiting new members. The scrapping was probably for the best, as this plot would have felt very similar to the Better World story arc already present, where the Justice League fights their evil counterpart in the Justice Lords, doppelgangers from another world who went rogue after President Lex Luthor murdered the Flash. Basically, Injustice if it wasn't stupidly edgy. That said, this plot is very different from that one, both of those actually, which is a good thing, but how it's different is of questionable quality, but we'll get into that. For now, I'm going to, hopefully, show you the entirety of the Justice League's debate over whether or not they're going to go to Earth 2 and fight the crime syndicate. If copyright kills me, I'll just narrate the whole thing, I guess, but hopefully that doesn't happen.
I don't trust him.
There's a surprise.
Maybe he's on the up and up. You said yourself, he's not our Luthor.
Still, never met a Luthor I liked.
I've read his mind. He's telling the truth. Regardless, we have a responsibility to the millions of people being oppressed on his world.
Look, for all my power, when it comes down to it, I'm just a beat cop. There are rules. Another dimension may be out of our jurisdiction.
I can't believe we're having this discussion. Of course we're going to help.
She's right. That's what we do.
Not this time.
Why not?
We've got too much on our plate right here. We haven't even finished constructing our new headquarters.
Our first responsibility is to protect the Earth.
That's right. Our Earth. We don't have enough manpower to even do that properly.
Fair enough, but we're talking about millions of people. We can't just turn our backs. We have to go.
Every League member gets one line to voice their point, but nothing is truly discussed, nothing is debated. There's no argument made that the Justice League might be walking into a trap, that they might be acting self-righteously, or anything else that might potentially have to prolong this debate scene. Hal Jordan is a Green Lantern, so he can't just abandon the sector he was assigned by the Guardians, right? Superman said that he doesn't trust Luthor, so why is he so quick to trust him? The only indication that we're given that he doesn't like Luthor outside of this scene is when he shoots down his frankly much better plan to take down the crime syndicate piece by piece, as opposed to Superman's "we're going after the big guys right away" whole shtick. At every other point, Superman acts like he's just another colleague, which I don't buy for a minute, especially after just watching Public Enemies. And yes, I know they're different continuities, but it's still Superman we're talking about. Jean-Jean's read Luthor's mind, but he could have had those memories implanted into him by a metahuman on his Earth, right? While we aren't given a breakdown of how his telepathy works in this movie, the only direct application we see from it is when he reads the thought that crosses the president's daughter's mind in that immediate moment.
My God, Dad. You were a war hero. When did you turn into a coward?
He is not a coward. Men who have seen battle are often among those who hold life most dear.
So, was Luthor thinking about the attack, or the years leading up to his dimension jump, or what? If he was thinking about that scene that we just saw, you know, the one at the beginning of the movie, again, that could have been staged. Those could have been false memories. They just can't know, and they don't even consider that they might be going into this with bad information. As it is, it just feels like the writers made this scene out of obligation, like it was required to do so because it was probably in one of the previous versions that I don't know enough about to make a definitive statement on them. Wonder Woman even implies that the whole thing is just a formality, and that them going was a foregone conclusion. But if that was the case, and they all knew that, then why include the scene at all? None of the Justice League show any individual thought outside of their baseline personality except in this scene, so if anything, the movie would be less frustrating if it wasn't here, because it's lying to me that these guys might be actual characters instead of set dressing. And that's another problem. None of the League members are interesting. Now, it isn't a hard rule that your protagonists have to go on a personal journey. They don't need to learn anything by the end or overcome some great personal flaw, but they do need a character. Jack Sparrow doesn't learn anything from the Pirates movies. He's literally shoved into these adventures, and he just kind of reacts to them as they come to him, but he does have charm, a larger-than-life personality, and is immensely fun to watch. Now, what do the Leaguers have? Well, Flash is the jokey one, Superman is the goody two-shoes, Batman is the brooding loner who always has a plan. The archetypes that these characters created are now all that there is to the characters, when that was never really true in most other adaptations, at least the good ones. Batman is a really complex character. Superman is one that no one gets right. Hal Jordan can be good, even a comparable movie to this proved that. You know, all of these guys have the potential to be good characters, but none of them achieve it. Instead, the only reason to have anyone but Lex Luthor and Batman is 1, to be able to call them the Justice League, and 2, to act as the muscle. That the movie's narrative and meta-narrative treat them the same way is frankly hilarious, and in a very bad way. They are meatheads with cool powers that are there to look cool and kick some ass. In other words, each character is a chair in a wrestling match. They are props to be used in the action scenes. Just to prove my point, I can count the number of lines Hal Jordan has on one hand. So, quick insert here from Future Sight. I wrote this entire video in one sitting and meant to section out the Martian Manhunter and President's Daughter subplot, but it was so forgettable and pointless that I completely forgot to talk about it. So yeah, we're moving on. So that means that all of the attention went to the crime syndicate, right? Well, Johnny Quick has a bad case of Hal Jordan. One hand, if you don't count stupid lines. The Green Lantern knockoff, who is apparently called Power Ring, I couldn't recall a single time he uttered anything but grunts in a fight. I had to go back in the movie to the crime syndicate's discussion scene to find one, where all he contributes is questioning what they're going to do with the Dead Members territory that the Joker ripoff blew up in the intro. That leaves Superwoman, who is entertainingly sadistic, if one-dimensional in that sense, Owlman, the best character in the movie, and Ultraman, who is a mob boss, and that's the end of it. For how much screen time he gets, Ultraman is one of the weaker villains in the movie, actually, since he has absolutely no depth. Superwoman is interesting not only for her unique design, which feels like the only one of the crime syndicate where they didn't just slightly tweak a Leaguer's outfit or one of their sidekicks, but also because she's a psychopath and she knows it. In fact, she relishes that she's an insane murderer. It's how she gets her kicks, and we see that in Batman's losing battle with her, though he eventually tricks her into defeat, sure. And that leaves us with Owlman. Despite that I said that he was the best character, that does not mean I liked him. He turns out to be the main villain of the movie, as he's the one who wants to blow up the multiverse, and while he has more depth than, say, Ares from Wonder Woman, I found his monotone voice, derivative design, and first-year philosophy tier motivations extremely dull, and his plan didn't even make any sense. To break down the physical actions he takes, I don't understand the leap in logic of Earth Prime being the first universe to exist, so if that one dies, then the others die too. So, if my mother dies, does that mean I die too? No. He says himself that each universe is entirely disconnected from the other, using that fact as his basis for thinking that free will ultimately doesn't matter, as every choice that can be made will be made anyway, right? So who cares if Earth Prime was the first universe? The only way his plan works is if he both travels to Earth Prime and then travels back in time to before it split off into different universes, which he doesn't even consider. So TLDR, Owlman doesn't understand how creation works. To discuss his philosophy, again, it comes back to the separation of the different universes. Yes, all decisions that can be made will be made in every permutation imaginable, but he is still making those decisions. The version of him that made one decision is entirely different from the version that made the other choice by his own logic. So yes, in the larger multiverse, each individual choice won't affect any other world, but that doesn't mean it doesn't affect the world that he is living in. Case in point, the Syndicate's actions directly led to their own arrests by prompting Luthor to travel to Earth 1 to get the Justice League and set the movie into motion. If the point was that Owlman is just a giant narcissist who can't bear a multiverse where he isn't at the center, then that would be fine and I would have no problem. Instead, in the last 10 minutes I want to point out, they paint him as some kind of nihilistic, the world is overpopulated, man. You know, that type of character. He literally says humanity is a cancer in the final battle, yet he never expressed any of these types of beliefs before this point. He then goes on to say that all bad things have happened because of humanity, which, again, stupid, and so wants to wipe them off the map. This, of course, contradicts his earlier statement of,
"And once I destroy it, all reality will follow."
since his world is overpopulated shtick implies that he wants to preserve everything that isn't humanity. And by the way, I want to mention that his bomb is only shown to be capable of destroying a single planet, i.e. not the entirety of reality, so double stupid. This is Earth Prime. Those are stars, and we can safely assume that there are countless other planets with life on them that will not disappear from the Prime universe. As an example, the Guardians existed before humanity. And really quick, this isn't even technically Earth Prime if we're looking at the larger DC multiverse. Earth Prime is us. It's our Earth, or at least it was at this point in the continuity. This deserted place doesn't fit that description, and this movie was at least originally tied to the larger multiverse, since the DCAU has its place in the DC multiverse, but I suppose that's not relevant to the topic at hand. Do you see my point here, though? His thought process changes constantly and inorganically, which is the important thing. His ideas make no sense under even the slightest bit of scrutiny, which can work if he has charisma, but he doesn't have charisma, or even an interesting backstory on top of all of his other issues. God, I hate Owlman. Why does he have to be the most interesting part of the movie? Unfortunately, the action can't really save the flimsy plot like Public Enemies. The choreography is, quite frankly, embarrassingly bad. Again, we have tons of the run slowly at you and no one reacts thing, but on top of that, we have what feels like no actual consequences to any actions taken. It doesn't matter how much Green Lantern hits Power Ring, he will show no signs of battle damage or fatigue and will continue fighting until the scene arbitrarily ends, and the same goes for everyone else. Gone are the brutal decapitations of Wonder Woman, gone is the interesting choreography and tactics used in Public Enemies, and gone is the strong direction of Doomsday. We're left with mediocrity. I've never once agreed with Cosmonaut Variety Hour's interpretation of Marvel fights as being uninteresting because it's just a person using karate to fight another person using karate, yet here I am saying almost the same thing. Almost every fight is just guys punching each other with either no tactics used or only the most basic of tactics being used to win the entire fight. Like we see when Superman reflects Ultraman's heat vision back at him with a mirror that he just finds. Doesn't show us the environments at all on the list of the movie's flaws for me, would you? Yes, I know that the DC heroes' powers are wonky and have no real rules, but interesting things can still be done. It's been done before by people that know how to do it. These guys either didn't care or more likely didn't have the time or money to do it right, and that's a real shame. I just want to point out one specific moment because it's the final action beat of the movie. Batman uses a rope gadget thing to bind Owlman to the bomb that's set to jump to the deserted Earth, right? Well, Owlman's gauntlets have claws. Sharp claws that could easily cut through the rope holding him there. He also has his own version of batarangs that are shown to be stronger than Batman, yet he doesn't do anything about it when Batman sends him to that uninhabitable Earth, because Batman said a cool one-liner beforehand, so this must be the final blow. Of course. Guys, I tried. I was looking forward to this one because when I saw it before, I really liked it. But man, it did not hold up well upon further examination. And I have a prediction that that's going to be a running theme for this series from basically here on out. I know that comic book stories are written like soap operas, where if a storyline isn't liked by viewers, it's dropped more often than not. Granted, with some notable exceptions, Clone Saga. Other times, events are written for the sake of it, or to have shock value. One More Day. Very, very rarely do comic books attempt to say something truly thought-provoking. And that's not to say that they don't regularly do that without trying to say it explicitly, with like an ideological battle or the whole foil/doppelganger conflict like we see in this movie. I'm just pointing out the overt attempts to say something. For trying to do that, this movie is so much better than Green Lantern First Flight, which is 70 minutes of boring, lazy, tired story with no good characters, good messages, or good production values. This movie tried, and I do appreciate that. I only wish that I can come here and tell you that it succeeded.